You're listening to GWP Weather. It's Saturday, July 25th, 2026, and in today's weather report, we are tracking some dangerous heat that will be sticking around through Tuesday. We're also going to be tracking a couple of tropical cyclones in the eastern Pacific. So let's go ahead and start off by looking at our hazards for today across the state of Missouri. We have a moderate 2 out of 4 heat risk for us. That's really all the hazards that we have for today. Looking at some of the different weather alerts that we have across the country, we've got the heat advisories in orange from Florida, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, all the way through Missouri, the entire state of Missouri under a heat advisory right now. And then we've got extreme heat warnings as well across that pinkish purple color that we have across Oklahoma and Kansas, Arkansas, as well as many other states. That's where the heat risk is going to be just a little bit more severe than what we're dealing with for the areas in orange. But both heat alerts are very serious. We have red flag warnings and air quality alerts across the Pacific Northwest. We've also got flood watches across New Mexico into central and northern Alabama as well. So we've got heat index values of 100 to 110 degrees that will be expected through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. That's how long our heat advisory remains in effect for. So we're looking at the possibility of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and dehydration. So you want to make sure to drink plenty of water, never leave kids or pets in a vehicle, and then take frequent breaks in the shade or AC as well. And as you'll see here on our 5-day forecast for the National Weather Service in Springfield, Missouri's weather story, the heat is going to be building as we go into Sunday and Monday. High temperatures pushing into the lower 100s, low temperatures only dropping back into the low to mid 70s, maybe even upper 70s in some cases. The heat will stick around until Wednesday, where temperatures will drop off just slightly into the low to mid 90s, but still, triple digit heat index values will be possible even beyond Tuesday. So we're looking at a major heat risk as we go into tomorrow. As we mentioned, moderate heat risk for today, but major heat risk as we go into Sunday. That's going to stick around for us as we go through Monday, as well as into Tuesday across our southern counties. And then by Wednesday, that heat relief will begin to move in. Cooler temperatures expected, but we're still going to have a moderate heat risk as we go into next Wednesday. Now we'll look at some of the different hazardous weather across the country. So again, we've got that major heat risk for many states as we go through today, even a couple areas in purple indicating that extreme heat risk. This is going to continue into Sunday as it builds across the central plains here, continuing into Monday as well. Tuesday, that heat will start to be a little bit more concentrated across the southern portion of the U.S., but will be sticking around through the rest of next week. So we've also got a fire risk that we're dealing with. We've got a critical fire risk for the areas highlighted in red for today. That is a 2 out of 3 risk from the SPC's Fire Weather Outlook. So again, we've got Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana dealing with a fire risk. You'll also notice that we have some areas that are highlighted in purple. That's where we're going to be looking at scattered dry thunderstorms. What do we mean by a dry thunderstorm? Well, essentially, it's a thunderstorm where you have lightning, but the precipitation is not reaching the ground because it's too dry at the surface. And so sometimes that dry lightning can spark dry vegetation, leading to a wildfire. So we're going to be dealing with that risk for today across the state of Montana there. As we go into Sunday, we'll once again have an elevated to critical fire risk across the Pacific Northwest. So that will continue to be a threat over the next couple of days there in the Pacific Northwest states. Moving into the tropics, we have this one area that we're watching to the south of Hawaii, but that's moving out to sea, not going to be a threat to any U.S. land. But what we are tracking is a Category 2 hurricane and then a tropical storm newly formed to the south of Mexico. First, we'll look at that hurricane. Very impressive satellite picture here. We've got a very symmetrical storm. We've got a very clear eye in the center where conditions are very calm. That's how it is in the center of a hurricane. So things are looking very strong with that storm. That being said, it is going to be running into some cooler waters, some wind shear, and some drier air, and that is going to weaken it over the next several days. That being said, you'll notice that the northern Hawaiian Islands are in the forecast cone of uncertainty for this storm. The good news is wind speeds are only expected to be around 40 to 50 miles per hour once the worst of the storm moves into Hawaii. Also, we're expecting the majority of the storm to stay in the northern part of the Hawaiian Islands, not necessarily as much in the southern Hawaiian Islands. So that is certainly some good news. As you'll notice here, the models are all predicting that this storm will weaken rapidly over the next several days as it moves towards the state of Hawaii. We'll go ahead and we'll show you the GFS forecast on this storm from Tropical Tidbits. There we go into Tuesday. So again, a much weaker storm. The worst of the impacts are expected to stay just to the north, but still certainly something that we'll be watching over the next several days. As we mentioned, we also have a newly formed tropical storm to the south of Mexico. It is expected to become our first major hurricane. Major hurricane status is 111-mile-per-hour winds or greater. We are expecting to reach that as we go into the early part of next week. But the good news is this storm will be staying out to sea and will not be impacting us here in the United States.